Today, we're going to talk about stinging insects as part of the big group of insects that we primarily do treatments on. The ones that we most commonly see are going to be stinging insects, rodents, ants, and lastly, spiders. And this is one of those groups. So stinging insects, there's a lot that goes into it. We don't have a particularly big group of species that we have to deal with, and they're going to primarily fit into bees and wasps as far as category. So what we're going to talk about first is, what do we do to treat them? We inspect, treat, and educate the customer. So our most important thing that we're going to do with all of it is going to be inspecting. And inspecting is going to entail using the web brush to go around, knock down webs, wasp nests, things like that. At the same time, it gives us a chance to be able to get some dust in areas, cracks and crevices, especially decorative rock treatments or placements that are on the building, or maybe someplace on the fencing or some other area that's been designed to be able to be more decorative. And bees and wasps have a tendency to be able to find these little holes and nooks and crannies and be able to build nests and colonies there that by the time we find them may be pretty large. And as we said, bees and wasps, primarily what we're going to talk about and go through. So wasps are narrow-waisted hymenopterans. You hear a lot of talk about wasp waist versus bees that don't have that very slender waist. Yellow jackets and hornets are in the vespids, and they're social insects living together, as opposed to the sphecids that are solitary wasps. The females typically have an ovipositor that when you look at, you're going to think, wow, that's a huge stinger. It's meant to be laying eggs, but they do modify them in certain parts of the colony, certain workers that then use them for protection and stinging. Many of the solitary wasps are going to be ones that attack or eat other insects. So they're going to capture them, either put them into a chamber that might be attached to a structure, as in the case of organ pipe wasps, or they may be something that they're going to bury, as in the case of cicada killers. And the solitary wasps will attack specific types of insects. So they're good for biological control and help with the horticultural control of pests that might attack certain plants. Those social wasps are usually going to be in the Polyctinae or the vespids. And you'll see them oftentimes here as what we call umbrella wasps. And they're hanging up underneath protected areas such as decks, eaves of houses, things like that. Primarily, when we think about wasps, we're thinking, stinging and getting attacked, but the majority of them are not going to be aggressive, especially up around here. The hornets and things like that you would see in a much larger round basketball type shape would be ones that you would associate more with that aggression to try to protect their nest. Most of the wasps that are solitary mate, and then the female goes on her way and starts to build the nest. So it's not going to be where there's a big family involved. There might be multiple solitary wasps that are in one area, but they're not working together to try to raise any of the young. They have a hard exoskeleton, and the three main body parts are the head, thorax, and abdomen. All the wings and legs are attached to the thorax. The abdomen's free and primarily used as a repository for venom and stinging apparatus, the modified ovipositor. The wasps also have great eyesight, and they have simple eyes that are basically holes in the top of their head that allow them to see light and dark, compound eyes that allow them to see very wide range of area. And then there's other parts of the colony beside workers and queens and the mated pair that are called drones. And basically they are sterilized males. The wasps also do not really pollinate. They can, there's some pollen catches on their bodies, but they're not really that good at it, not like bees. They're primarily going to be the type of insect that helps to get rid of other insects. So they're basically going to be attacking things and predaceous on other insects more than anything else. Then bees, there's 16,000 known species. They've been around since the Roman times, when they would cultivate bees to use them as pollinators in their fields. They're ones that we typically deal with are going to be honeybees, bumblebees, some of the stingless bees. We're going to see mason bees, carpenter bees, leaf cutters, solitary sweat bees. And generally, they're going to feed on nectar and pollen and using them for energy and for protein. But in the course of doing that, they'll also pollinate plants because the pollen gets stuck on the hair and pollen baskets on their bodies, and they transfer that to other plants. There's a pair of large compound eyes on bees. The antennae usually have 13 segments, 12 in the females, having an elbow type of a joint. Mouth parts are chewing and sucking, both in the bees and in the wasps. And the thorax has generally three segments, and each segment has a pair of legs with it. Bee pollination is extremely important to a number of crops that are commercially grown. And because of the decline of many of the wild bees, and for a variety of reasons, other insects have had to take up the slack, so to speak, in being able to pollinate plants and allow us to be able to have the things that we have and or need. So one of the things that's been going on with the pollination is the event of colony collapse disorder. A number of colonies suddenly just disappeared and took off or failed to return back to their hiding area or their nesting area. There's a number of different reasons for that. First is the fact that bees used to have an area that when they flew, they could be able to rest at, where there would be wildflowers, things like that. And we've gotten rid of a lot of that area because we've overbuilt and taken away the areas that the wildflowers would have grown and the bees could have rested at. Secondary to that would be the varroa mite, which has started to attack bees. And this tiny little mite gets caught in the breathing area and apparatus of the bees and literally chokes them out. Another thing is the advent of chlornicotinols and the use of those. That particular pesticide has a great knockdown power and efficacy in killing the bees and wasps and any of the Hymenoptera. So when people are using it without paying attention to how they should be using it, it can create a great deal of damage. And then lastly, the overworking by bee collectors. When bee collectors take their hives out to pollinate plants and fields, they used to do this on a monthly, maybe quarterly basis. Now it's almost weekly. So the bees really never get a chance to rest, recuperate from the collection of pollen and nectar and pollinating fields and coming back and then being able to rest in the colony. They're constantly out working, and eventually that just wears them out and makes them more susceptible to the mites and to the pesticides that are out there. So we have developed through some research with the Entomological Society and National Pest Management Association, the Pollinator Protection Program. And what that does is it allows us to do treatments, protect the houses, and be able to provide customer service with the added benefit of not harming any of the bees and wasps that might be flying around that are needed. As we said, wasps are not pollinators. So with them, we still would knock them down, take care of them so that nobody was getting stung or hurt, especially if a customer is allergic to them. But with the bees, we try to treat during times when they're not flying around as much. We never treat when there's flowers on any of the plants because the treatment to that area could create a problem when the bee comes in to pollinate the flower. We choose alternative methods using dusts and granules and a drier formulation that won't harm the bees. And lastly, we are very careful on where our targeted applications are so that we don't end up harming bees either. And then our communication to the customer is pretty strong in explaining the fact that we do not want to go and harm the pollinators. So we put this in the notes, and in addition to that, talk to people so they know what's going on and that we've modified the service for this particular treatment. So what is the treatment? Well, one, if there is a nest or a colony, let's say, that's small of an umbrella wasp and it's 20, 30 feet in the air, there's oftentimes no need to treat. If it's off the property, there's no need to treat. We have to make sure that anytime we're going to do a treatment for wasps or bees, that it's in a location that we can treat, that it's not over a pond, that it's not going to harm any of the animals or any of the local beekeepers that might be directly adjacent to this property we're treating. So we want to sometimes not treat and do something else as an alternative, maybe a capture or something like that with traps. Another method of treatment would be liquids, using the backpack sprayer, compressed air sprayer, or power sprayer to do applications at a lower level to treat for other insects so that way we don't harm the bees and wasps. However, if we do want to do a treatment for the bees and wasps, we want to make sure that it's directed in an area where their colony is specifically at. Typically, we aren't going to treat for bees. We're going to get a beekeeper to come and get them. When it comes to wasps, we will treat, and any of the liquids that we use that have some free-flowing material or an added material such as a Centria could be used to be treating them so that it'll have some knockdown. Any of the microcaps generally are not going to be good knockdown. They're going to be something that's good over the long haul. It might take a day to knock them back, but in the meantime, those wasps will be somewhat upset and are likely to sting. Dry formulations, probably the best method with any of this, and that's going to be the dusts, in particular tri-dye, because there are some pyrethrins in it that will allow it to be able to work much better than something like diatomaceous earth that might take a little bit of time. And then non-chemically, can we seal them out? Can we capture them? Those ground nesting bees, sometimes you could even take a glass jar and put it over the top of their entry and exit. They'll think they're still flying outward, but in reality, they're being trapped inside of the glass jar. And then the heat that builds up inside will kill them. And that would take care of them without using any chemical at all. So there are some treatments, some ways to do things that may be unique for each of the situations we're dealing with. But we want to be aware of all of our options and be sensitive to what the customer is having issues with and their needs. And then we need to educate them. We have to put in the notes specifically what we did, where we found them, what to expect. Are they coming back later on in the evening? Do they need to wait a day or two before they take down the nest? Is it something we need to follow up? All of this needs to be put in the notes so that we can have a good understanding of what's going to happen next. Verbally, we want to explain to them in addition to the notes so that there's no doubt. Don't go near that shrub. Be careful outside because they're going to be a little ticked off. There are some that are going to be returning later and wanting to get back into the colony. They'll get into the material and they'll die out, but it's going to take a couple of days. And if possible, take them around and show them where the pests are. Where did you find the wasps? Where did you find the bees? And lastly, make sure you leave a good voicemail with all your information. So have the notes. If you can, go to the door, knock on it. If you can bring them with you, even better, to show them what's going on. And lastly, if you can't directly talk to them, leave a good voicemail detailing what's going on. Bees and wasps, as we said, along with ants, spiders, rodents, are key insects that we deal with. And so we want to be very good at getting in and doing the treatment without creating any kind of problems environmentally to other predators that might be helping us take care of the pests.